A few weeks ago, I was in a meeting with one of my clients talking about the root cause of the business symptoms and team issues they were experiencing. It all boiled down to one word: culture. And my client had no idea that the symptoms he was seeing, lower sales, higher turnover, drop balls with clients, were all pointing to this. Culture isn't just an HR buzzword. It isn't about perks, ping pong tables, or how much your team likes working there. Think of it this way. If your business was a body, culture is the very oxygen you need to breathe. And today, I'm pulling back the curtain on the 3 culture levers that directly impact your team, your profitability, and your freedom as a business owner. A so-so culture is quietly costing you team, time, and money. And scaling a business on a shaky culture foundation, forget about it. It isn't just risky, it's expensive and damn near impossible to do. So settle in, because this episode is going to change your business and culture in ways you can't imagine.
Welcome to the Biz Doctor Podcast, my love letter to business owners the world over. I'm your host, Lauren Goldstein, award-winning business consultant and advisor fondly nicknamed the Biz Doctor by my clients. I help business owners who are burning the candle at both ends diagnose what is actually keeping them buried in the day-to-day busy work, and then formulate a treatment plan to adjust their business and team to fit them, so they can take a breath and a vacation and have more fun making a bigger impact than ever. So grab your favorite beverage and your earbuds, and let's dive into our latest episode.
Today, we're diving into perhaps the most ambiguous part of businesses: culture. Culture is the operating system of your business. It's the invisible set of rules and expectations that shape every decision when you're not in the room. In simple terms, it is the framework for decision-making that allows trust and autonomy to blossom, all with the certainty that everyone is moving in the same direction and making choices that are in the best interest for the business, team, clients, or customers. And that culture impacting those decisions, it's either stacking the deck in your favor or quietly draining your margins, undermining your goals, and leaking top talent. I've worked with more companies than I can count over my 14 years. And you know what is true for all of them? The ones that prioritized culture grew faster, had a bigger impact, were more successful, had better teams, and had profit margins that far surpass comparable businesses. Here's why. Culture dictates how quickly your team can execute, how well they solve problems, and how much ownership they take. Weak culture is a silent killer. Slower decisions, more drop balls that result in rework, endless fire drills, not to mention a shackle to your freedom as the business owner. High-performance culture, on the other hand, it accelerates results, protects resources, retains and attracts top talent, and keeps the client experience at its peak. I'm going to give you a case study on culture that so clearly illustrates this. Not long ago, I was fractional COO for a company that was having the usual challenges in the messy millions, but the thing that was their Achilles heel was in fact recruiting and retention. They were a multi-million-dollar business, so they had a proven service, customer base, etc. But what they didn't have was a culture that was going to support where they wanted to go. The most surprising thing was the owner, my client, was so proud of his culture and thought everything was fine. But the truth is, when he took his foot off the gas, everything slowed down and fell apart. And when I came in and did my signature diagnostic to really dig into the people pillar, it was far worse than even I imagined. He had a stable of 1099ers he was treating as employees, a big no-no. He had core values that no one could define in a way that was clear if someone was embodying them or not. He had a recruiter whose metric was putting butts in seats, not the right butts in seats. And he had a bunch of middle managers that I can only describe as chickens running around with their heads cut off. It was chaos. So we got to work. We introduced scorecards for role clarity. We started having a video on rule for all team calls. Honestly, guys, this was the first thing I noticed. On the very first all-hands meeting, no one, and I mean no one, including the business owner, had their cameras on. It was wild. We recalibrated accountabilities, clarified core values and KPIs, narrowed down all the priorities, quote unquote, into one big goal for the company. And the biggest thing is we sat the leadership team down to get to the root of who we were as a team, company, and leadership, and what that meant in specific traits. Now, suddenly, the team had a North Star on which to base their decisions on. Interviewing a new person? Easy. Do they fit the big 5 traits in our core values? Challenge with a customer? Easy. How does the solution fit in our core values? Another shiny object popping up? You guessed it, it comes back to culture and the big company goal. Suddenly, it started shifting from a culture of delegation by dictatorship to one of leaders working together and growing. But here's the other amazing thing that happened. The problem team members that they were struggling with, guess what happened? In quick succession, they all resigned. You know why? Because they could see they were no longer a fit for the culture. And that's the real power move of having a clear, unshakable culture. It gives you a no-nonsense way of building a business, of having a high-performing team, better decision-making, and direction. And bonus, it also gives permission to the rest of the team to hold each other accountable to the culture, standards, and vision, which makes your job a heck of a lot easier as a leader. If you're a business owner or a leader that is feeling like you can't quite figure out why your team isn't more autonomous, how to trust them more, how to give them better frameworks for decisions, or how to get out of any sort of micromanagement, this, my friend, is where to start. If you spend one quarter really dialing in your culture, your business, team, and impact will blossom in ways you can't even imagine. And your whole business will flow better, become easier, and more profitable. Plus, your team is actually going to have more fun and success. Those sound like a hell of a lot of reasons to put culture clarity at the top of your priorities, don't you think? All right, so now that I've set the stage, here are 3 of my favorite levers to pull to build a better culture that boosts profits, performance, and your personal freedom. These 3 are what I know creates the strongest culture and are coincidentally part of a bigger framework of my 7 C's to a high-performing team and business, which actually happens to be part of our Golden Key scorecard. So, quick pause before we dive into this next bit. Because if you're ready for more freedom, autonomy, and let's be honest, fun in your business, then this is for you. Our Golden Key scorecard is the best plug-and-play tool designed to help your team run with more clarity, autonomy, accountability, and capacity, so you can focus on driving growth instead of managing chaos. It's the same framework we use with our clients to create high-performing, self-sufficient teams that unlock their next level of scalability, ease, and profitability. If you're ready to step fully into the owner seat and have a business that runs with you, not because of you, then this scorecard is the roadmap you've been looking for. It's going to be the game changer to take your successful business from good to great, not to mention save you a lot of team headaches while we're at it. You can download it for free at goldenkeypartnership.com/go and unlock the next level of success for your team and your business. Now back to the episode. First, we have clarity. This is the very first of my 7 C's to a high-performing team. You have 3 levels to this one. First, company level. Do you have a crystal clear mission, vision, and goals that everybody knows? Not just you. They're not just stuck in your brain. And goals that are preferably cascading goals. So what that means is, in my experience, businesses that have one singular goal and then cascading goals that lead to that goal have more success, because then all of a sudden, everybody's not working on goals that are loosely related. Everybody is working towards the one big goal. Now, on the team level, do you have core values you can see and measure? How do you know if someone is embodying a core value? Now, me personally, I find core values to be more aspirational, whereas traits are where the rubber meets the road. So in addition to your core values, what are the 5 non-negotiable traits that every member of the team must have to be on the team? And I think, just as a caveat here, I think this is where a lot of people get stuck around core values and why they don't use them, because they think that these core values are the things that every person on the team needs to have and embody. And while I like that to be true, the reason I say they're more aspirational is because I wouldn't necessarily fire someone because they didn't embody a core value. I would, however, fire somebody if they weren't embodying a core value and they didn't have a trait. They go hand in hand, but I find that when you narrow down your traits, it's much easier to hold people accountable. So for example, one of my clients, 5 traits are grit, coachable, self-driven, reliable team player. And they went through with me and made a clear definition for all of them. So they know not only what they're looking for, but how to hold people accountable and what it means. Because that's the other thing with core values and traits and all of this culture stuff. If you haven't clearly defined what it means and how to measure it, it doesn't matter. So that's part of clarity as a whole, making sure that everybody understands what you're talking about so you know you're talking about the same thing. Now, the last level is your per person level. Do you have clarity on a person's role's mission, the problems they're solving, their accountabilities, and of course, their traits for success? So you've heard me say, if you've listened to previous podcast episodes, that I hire differently. I don't really hire for resumes. Yes, experience is important. I hire more for traits. So who are they in their DNA that's going to make them successful in their role? Now, these traits are different than the 5 non-negotiables that I talked about before. The 5 non-negotiables everybody on the team should have. But now, if you look at each role, there will be different traits that will help someone either succeed or not succeed if they do or don't have them. For example, you would never want a salesperson to be highly detail-oriented and need closed loops. Salespeople, love salespeople, they move fast, they kind of leave chaos in their wake, but they're more about people and relationships and being front of house. Whereas somebody who's highly detail-oriented and loves closed loops generally loves spreadsheets and lives in the back of the house. All of that to say, when you understand and have the clarity on the per person level, not only on their roles, mission, accountabilities, problem they're solving, aka why is it important, and their traits for success, your culture is going to get so much better. The next one, connection. This one for me is perhaps the single most overlooked part of culture that I've seen. Your team on any given day should be able to clearly answer the following. How do I contribute to the scheme of things? What is my impact on the business? What difference do I make? And more importantly, how is this role in this business helping me with my goals? Your team needs to know they're not just a cog, but a valued member of the team that is helping you not only get where you want to go as the business owner, but where they want to go too. The reason this is so often overlooked is because busy business owners get stuck in the, how can this person help me in my business? Which is not wrong. It's just what normally happens. And when that happens, when we're busy and overwhelmed, like so many of us are, we forget about our team's dreams and goals. And it is critical that it is clear how your business and culture is not just about their work or how they help you, but how your business supports them too. So here's what I'll say. If you and your leaders don't know the dreams and goals of your team and how their work with you helps them get closer to that dream, you are missing the mark in a big way, and it's going to cost you talent. Lastly, silos and disconnection kill teams. So make sure it is clear how your team moves together, how they fit together, how the roles are all interconnected through interdependencies and teamwork necessary to solve the problems they were hired to break through. It's super important that you understand the neural network of your team and how it's all connected. Again, back to if your business was a body. Next, we have communication. Now, this one has a few critical parts. The first is setting up clear lines of demarcation over what your people own in regards to decisions versus what needs to get kicked upstairs. The clearer you are on what those lines are, the more autonomous and empowered your culture will be. I talk about this more in depth in my podcast episode about middle managers, so give that a listen. The second is deeper and even more impactful. Understanding how your team communicates. Find out how they process information. This is actually called chunking. So for those of you that don't know, I'm a board-certified NLP practitioner, and this right here is one of the most valuable things that you can learn about your team. I'll give you a really great example of how this can come back and bite you in the ass if you don't know. So several years ago, I was hiring for one of my clients. I'm not a recruiter. And normally when I sit in the fractional COO seat, of course I do hiring there. But for a very select few of my favorite clients, I will actually sit in the hiring seat and go hire someone for them. But unlike what a lot of recruiters do, where they just put someone in the seat and that's done, since I'm not a recruiter, I don't operate that way. And one of the key reasons my people stick for years is because I do a 6-month retention check-in every single month, at least for the first 90 days and then after. But the first 90 days, I always ask the same exact questions. And one of those questions is, what is causing friction or frustration in your role? Part of the reason, sidebar, that I ask the exact same questions is I'm looking for patterns. And my job when I'm sitting in this hiring role is to be the conduit, the bridge between the new hire and my client to help them better onboard, support, coach, etc., which is relevant to this example. So she tells me that she's really overwhelmed with the details of the role. I'm like, that's fair. You're kind of drinking from a fire hose. But I dig deeper. And it turns out she's not overwhelmed by the role. She's overwhelmed by how her manager is teaching her about the role. So in this case, I have a player who is so smart and autonomous and who's big picture first. So one of the questions that I ask that proves this chunking is, when starting a project, is it more important for you to know the big picture first or the details first? This tells me how they chunk information. Now, she likes to know big picture first. Her manager wants to know details first. This is also, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but this is also a clue into if you have a player versus a worker bee. The problem wasn't the information. It was how the information was being delivered. So I said, got it, totally understand. Hopped on a call with her manager and I said, hey, just as an FYI, this is going to be a stretch for you because this is outside how you normally operate. But when you're training, you need to start with the big picture first and let her ask questions. When we had the call 30 days later for her 60-day point, not a single issue with how her manager was training her, because we were able to see that there was a disconnect about how they process information. In addition to finding out how they process information, again called chunking, you want to find out how they like to get feedback, how they like to be acknowledged for a job well done, and what their preferred method of communication is. Now, this is a big one. Outside of all of those things, once you know that, it's important to remember that effective communication must travel via the shortest route necessary to get the work done or solve the problem. And that often means it might not be through the chain of command. So hierarchy is important, but only if it's creating collaboration and not silos of information. This is also a gentle reminder that you, as the business owner and leader, might know the answer. Chances are you do, because you've been doing this for a while and you built a great, successful business. But always being the one to solve the problem, that just enables your team and keeps you shackled. So build a culture of only coming to you with a problem and a solution, and being the one to ask your team when they do come to you, what do you think we should do? And it really just puts the onus back on them to think critically, but also grow. Because your number one job as a leader, as you've heard me say so many times before in previous episodes, is to create other leaders. And remember, we want to push problems down to the level that has the most amount of information to solve it. Otherwise, this is what's going to happen. You're going to waste a lot of time running around trying to get all the information you need to solve the problem. So lean on your leaders and trust them. Build leaders who critically think and come to you with, this is my favorite rule, the 1-3-1 rule. 1 problem, clearly defined, 3 suggestions, 1 recommendation. Trust me, it will change your life. Now, I also like to add this part to all my meetings. 3 simple questions. What's working? What's not? Where do you need support? This is a really clean way to increase communication and collaboration and get a high-level overview of what we can do more of, the things that are working, what we need to solve, things that are not working, and where you as a leader need to support your leaders. It's also very beneficial to do this in leadership meetings with your different department heads because suddenly you can see patterns and stuff that's probably impacting the team that people aren't actually talking about come to the surface, and you can see how it's all connected or needs to be solved and what needs to be sidebarred. Super helpful. Highly, highly recommend. I love exit interviews. I'm talking these could be perhaps some of my favorite things to do because if you do them right, you can get so much information from them that will help you and the team move forward. Now, here's a little caveat. I do them for my clients, and probably one of the reasons why they're very effective is not only because of the neuroscience and NLP background I have, but probably because I'm an unbiased third party. I'm able to see things that they perhaps don't. But that being said, I have 10 questions I ask anytime someone leaves. And let me tell you what a treasure trove those 10 were yesterday when I did one of these for one of my advisory clients. So here was the situation. I'd been hearing about this team member for 2 years. It had started, with just what do I think? Because I wasn't actually involved in their hiring. But through the course of these past 18 months, we have had numerous conversations about this person. And then in recent months, it actually started shifting to conversations about this person and their manager. And the long and the short of it is, after 18 months, there was mixed performance, frustration all around. He wasn't where everyone thought he should be. And there was a very tough conversation that happened last week with his manager that said, if these things don't improve, you're on a PIP, so these things will improve. Then lo and behold, come Monday morning, a resignation letter was in my client's inbox. We talked about it, what the implications were, all the things. Nobody was really surprised, which is a red flag, but she asked me if I would do an exit interview with him. And I said, of course. Now, what I uncovered was so fascinating. And the reason I want to share this with you is because I think this is an amazing study in what not to do, or rather things you could do that would stop what happened. So what I told my client after we got on the call, I sent her one email and said, holy smokes, that was fascinating. When can you talk? I told her, I said, this is really interesting because I know that the majority of the reason why this happened the way that it happened was because of his manager. And if you've listened to my episodes on retention, you know that managers are actually one of the single biggest factors in if somebody will stay or go. And this was textbook manager mismanagement. Not to say the employee didn't have his own shortcomings, but what happened was very simple. Of course, I can see this. I'm an unbiased third party. I know the client really well, and I have 10 questions that actually get to the root of all the things. So through the course of our conversation, I realized I was talking to a player. Unfortunately for him, he was managed by a worker bee, which is not great. Worker bees, if you're not familiar with this framework, players come with a plan. They do not like micromanagement. I mean, nobody really likes micromanagement, but they're very autonomous. They're critical thinkers. They like to move fast. Basically, you tell them the plan. They say, great, I've got the play. Let me run the ball in the field. Worker bees, very task-oriented versus project-oriented, tend to be risk-averse, love repetition. There's a lot of differences here. So as I'm listening to him and I'm asking about culture and expectations and if he felt value and how the communication was and all the things, what was interesting is the things that came up were he wanted to learn faster. He wanted to have different communication. He had different expectations about how he was going to fit in the business and make a difference. And in fact, one of the things that he told me was he didn't feel like he was actually making a difference because this manager was making the cardinal sin of managers, telling him he could take over something, run with the ball of something, and then taking it back. And that, my friend, is a culture you don't want to have. You want to have a culture of empowerment, of critical thinking, of letting people take the ball and run with it and be creative. And so when I look at this exit interview, I think there's enough, I hate to use the word blame to go around, but what I told my client is I said, if I had had this exit interview a year ago, we could have salvaged this. It was a very easy fix because one of the things that I always ask is, if we fixed XYZ, would you stay? And his answer was yes, of course, because he'd brought up all of this stuff. But where the culture of my client fell on its face is they were trying to let a manager develop into a leader instead of recognizing that the clarity of the traits necessary to be a leader were not there. So he's a damn good person in his role. He does an amazing job. But being a leader and a manager, he's not cut out for it. And so if you have a clear culture, if you're clear on communication and connection and strategy, then you would know who the people are that are on the path to leadership and management and who aren't. Because that's the real power of culture, is it gives you a way to make decisions without the emotions. Because a lot of times business owners, we want to reward people who are doing a great job by giving them other leaders. And sometimes that works because they want to be leaders. And sometimes they are just strong individual contributors that need to stay individual contributors. To wrap this whole story up, the takeaways that I shared with my client were this. We were not clear in the beginning. Again, they hired him before I came in, of what the path progression of this role was. We were not clear on who this person was in their DNA and how to best lead and support them. We put a manager above them that didn't get it, did not understand how to lead a player. And when he sent out the bat signal, instead of my client really listening and digging in and saying, okay, I hear you, we're moving managers, unfortunately, they thought it would be a good teachable moment, and it ended up in somebody leaving. So all of that to say, most people don't leave because they want to. If you have a truly good fit for your team and you've done the work, you've filled out their scorecard, you know the traits, you've done the work, it's a win-win for everybody. Most people leave because they feel like they aren't valued, their voice isn't heard, or there's just no room for growth. And all of those things you can fix with your culture and getting really, really clear on who you are and what you stand for. What I hope you're taking away from this episode is that culture isn't just about words. It's about clarity, communication, connection, and strategy. It isn't something to be workshopped once, thrown on a wall in the office, and then never revisited. It should be a living, breathing part of your business every day. It's about intentionally designing the whole architecture of the most important part of your business, your people. It's your North Star, your gut check, your litmus test for who you are and who gets to be on the bus with you. I promise if you slow down and take the time to really dial this in, get clear and get everybody on board, you won't recognize your business in 6 months, probably faster. And in 12 months, you'll wonder why the heck you didn't do it sooner. Thanks so much for listening in and sticking with me to the end. Be sure to bookmark this episode and come back to it. Of course, if anything I shared sparked something in you or resonated, I'd love to hear about it and for you to share this episode with your fellow business owners and leaders. Find me on the interwebs and let's connect. Tag or DM me on Instagram at It's Lauren Goldstein or LinkedIn or wherever you hang out online. Please take a moment to also rate and review our show so it shows up to more people who need to hear it. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe so you're first to get notified when our next episode is live and ready for your ears. Thanks so much for listening. That's it for this week's episode. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Biz Doctor podcast. Now, I like to say that friends don't let friends WebMD your business. So if you're wondering what your next steps could be, here are some options for you. No matter what, head to the show notes or to my website, goldenkeypartnership.com, for some impactful resources to support you getting out from under your business. That's also where you'll find the links to learn more about our services and how we support business owners, just like you, who are ready to make the successful jump from business operator in the trenches to visionary business owner with more freedom and flexibility. All of that info is on our website, so pop on over to learn more or get in touch. goldenkeypartnership.com. Finally, if you love the Biz Doctor podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would share it with your friends and network and give us a 5-star rating or review wherever you listen to your podcast.
An original
from Story Studio Network.